The story begins with the fact that a man who carries a huge hammer in his hands. And behind him lies a very large mountain of his opponents whom he killed. This man did not know the meaning of the word fear at all. He went on regardless. The man killed everyone who came across his path. The only person this man was afraid of was a huge monster with a bull's head. It was the Minotaur. The man slowly climbed up the stairs. He walked completely immersed in his thoughts. He was very big and strong. He had enough strength to calmly lift a huge hammer. The man began to say in his mind that he, the master of terror, felt fear in relation to another monster. At last this man came face to face with this terrible monstrosity, the Minotaur. Suddenly, something very strange and very scary began to appear behind this man. It was a very large monster with the head of a bull, or whether it was the head of a goat was not entirely clear. He had 3 eyes on his face and his body looked pretty good. This creature's body was completely ablaze with fire. So, it was possible to understand that his power lies in fire. The man stood calmly and continued to stare intently at the terrible monster. Suddenly, this man swung his huge hammer at the terrible creature standing behind him. The man struck the creature behind him with his hammer. The energy of this impact was bright white and blue in color, which illuminated the surrounding area and created a contrast with the dark background. Pieces of debris or stones are thrown outward by the force of the released energy. This ugly creature flew away from the man quite a distance. The blow was quite strong. Suddenly, an ugly creature in the form of a minotaur began to loudly shout at the man what he wanted. He will give him whatever he wants, whatever he wants. Just so that the man does not kill him and, if possible, does not beat him at all. Suddenly the man dropped his hammer. The minotaur was shocked by the man's action. This man's hammer was already quite close to the face of the terrible minotaur monster. The man bent down and tried to hit the monstrous monstrosity. Suddenly, this man's hammer glowed bright green. The energy of this hammer enveloped the man. His eyes also began to glow a bright green. There was such an impression that the hammer seemed to be torn from the middle by that incredibly strong energy. This man again swung at the terrible minotaur monster. The minotaur gave a loud cry. He asked the man why the hammer had suddenly doubled in size. The man simply ignored the question of this terrible monster. He did not even listen to what this terrible monster told him. The man understood that there was absolutely no sense in this. The man hit the terrible minotaur monster on the head. This man's hammer was covered in blood from the terrible monster he killed. Evil. 5 disasters. The inevitable tragedy of ancient times is repeating itself again. At last the final end of the first calamity came. Demon control, Jacernius Max. He will be fine, even if the whole world is against him. The man says that it will all happen right today, and at no other time. The Demon King would surely die today at the hands of this huge and strong man. Suddenly, the man came to a rather strange place. Everything around was in stones. And directly opposite the man on the throne sat a monster. The man did not understand what was happening. He began to mentally ask himself why he couldn't feel the power of this king. The king who was sitting on the throne began to laugh loudly and said to this man that he was the lord of the 8 Garas. This man will definitely not be able to defeat this king. The man began to speak to the Demon King, or had he decided to leave his physical form and become intangible? The Demon King tells the man that if he had a body, he would suffer the same fate as his companions. And against an elusive form, a physical attack is a waste of time. The man said only one word in his mind, grandfather. He realized his main mistake, he devoted very little time and attention to his improvement. He did not improve his magical abilities in any way. The Demon King continued to say that even if he lost his legion, as long as he, the Demon King, was alive, the prophecy would not pass. This man will not be able to kill him in any way, and the demon king will not be able to kill this man, but he will be able to crush the ground under his feet if he did not despise humanity. The demon king continued. He asked the man what he would do when there was not a single living soul left in the world and every corner of the world was filled with monsters. The king himself answered his question. He did not wait for the answer from the man. He said that the man would eventually just be left with nothing. The man began to say in his mind that the demon king had caught him. He has trained very little, so he has almost no magical abilities. It will not be easy for him to get rid of such an opponent. The man continued to say in his mind that he had the best skills among the warriors. He simply cannot match the unearthly anger. The man devoted quite a bit of time and effort to magical power. The man adds that he really needs this magical power now. Several minutes have passed since that meeting with the demon king. Some bright rays shone on the towers of the castle. One of the beams was bright white with a blue tint, and the other beam was red with white spots. Suddenly 2 more rays appeared on the other towers, and in the middle of these towers was a huge stone with a pattern. The other 2 rays were yellow and green. The man began to say that the summoning palace would soon begin summoning all the victims. The man was sitting by the fire and eating. He says that the ingredients were not very good, but he thinks that in the near future he will not even be able to do that. After he dropped out, he did his best to eventually be drafted in 1996. He thought that about 25 years had already passed. The man says that he has spent so much time here that he already feels at home there. They will come for him only if he remains in this position. He continued that he was very annoyed by these horrible mages, but he definitely had no other choice. Suddenly, a small window appeared, in which it was written that this man activated the veil of a liar, his special skills are disguise, and his target is the user. Finally, he fully activated his new powers. The man says that it is definitely time to start. It's time to learn magic. White square of the Palace of Appeal. Underground drain. There stood a huge monster in the form of a wolf. His body was very similar to that of a human, but it was completely covered in fur. This terrible monster saw in front of him the same man, the main character. The monster loudly called the boy. The wolf asked the man who he was. Suddenly, the monster in the form of a wolf began to attack the man. It was quite expected. This man, the main character, hit this terrible monster with all his might. The man says that this monster is an ordinary dog. A monster in the form of a wolf was hanging on a tree. He was hanging on a rope. Around his neck was a piece of cloth, on which it was written that everything around and this damned world had gone to hell. This man took the monster's sword and left as quickly as possible. The man, the main character, entered the underground drain through the grate. He says that it is difficult for him to breathe. He is constantly suffocated by the stench of blood. But this was in principle fully expected from the summoning palace. It was always like that there. The main character stood in the middle of a pile of dead people and monsters that were just lying on the ground and bleeding. He was covered in blood. The man says that he did not want to return to the place where he once almost died. For him, these were rather terrible memories that everyone would like to forget as soon as possible. But still, this is the only way to secretly learn magic. This man needs to blend in with the entire crowd of recruits so that no one will notice him and get the quest. The main character mentally says that only then will he be able to choose magic as a subclass. He will have to start from the first level. Suddenly one very ugly monster began to laugh loudly and say that he was quite curious what these useless people would surprise him with today. He is already very much waiting for this moment. This ugly monster continued to talk and laugh that all these magicians are very stupid and should hurry up and betray the humans. If only he could get rid of the hideous leather bags. Suddenly, behind this ugly monster appeared a sword that was tied to a rope. This sword went through the ugly monster. The monster says that he is very excited. With the force of the sword, the monster began to be thrown in the other direction. The ugly monster screamed loudly. He was nailed with a sword directly to the wall. As it turned out, it was the main character's sword. He tells the monster that he is finally hooked. The man took the ugly monster's leg in his hand. This monster's leg seemed so small compared to the main character's arm. The main character brought the monster to his face and told him to give him the whole list of tasks very quickly. The ugly monster replied that this man was just an abnormal freak. The ugly monster continued to speak to the man. He asked what the to-do list was. The monster says that the main character has simply lost his mind, he will tear him into small pieces. Suddenly, the main character tore off one of the monster's legs and asked, "Is that so?" The man says that it is his own choice. A man can ask another homunculus. The ugly monster was very frightened. He quickly agreed with the men and asked them to wait. The ugly monster opened its mouth and there was a blue bright ball. He told the man to take it. The main character took this ball without thinking. Suddenly, a task appeared before the man again. It said that he had received an assignment for the conscription area. And at the end there was a question, will he cope with this task? Then a list of quests appeared. It was an ordinary rank. Romantic, conditions, to see 2 months from the draft square. The reward for this task is +1 palace token. The soul of the company, conditions, within 10 minutes of the draft, you need to find a friend and give him a spiritual gift. The reward for this is the claw of the Black Hawk. Observer, conditions, read the inscription on the main gate aloud during the call. The reward for this is +1 to intuition. This man realized for himself that he needs to improve his intuition to begin with, he even has a curse on him. Therefore, he immediately chose the task of an observer, conditions, during the call, read aloud the inscription on the main gate. The reward for this is +1 to intuition. Suddenly the ugly monster asked the man if he would spare him because he was in a lot of pain. The main character remembered this ugly monster again. The man said of course he would be spared and threw the monster into the wall with all his might. The man began to say whether he was from a low rank. There is not a word written about hidden missions. But this is enough for now. This man added that the draft would start soon, so he would wait. Suddenly, someone began to approach the main character. The main character mentally said that they are there. Finally they came. They were ordinary people. They went and asked where they were and what it was all about. Someone says that there is no connection at all. Someone says that he did not even milk. Another was calling loudly for his mother. And someone asked again where they are. Suddenly, homunculi appeared among all these people, who began to laugh and say that the day of the great judgment for these people had finally arrived. They all need to be very careful if they don't want to die. Suddenly, the main character appeared in the middle of the crowd. All the people asked if it was possible that they were on the set of a movie, or if it was possible that they were all asleep. Others asked what it was all about and where they were now. The main character mentally says that everything is very wonderful, he managed to blend in with the crowd. But now he needs to activate the quest. Finally, the protagonist activated the draft square quest. This is all very wonderful. One of the homunculi says that now everyone must accept the mission. He is already burning with impatience. How many people does he still need to kill? One man from the crowd began to tell the homunculus that he was creating such a thing. The man told the homunculus to bring his boss there. Suddenly one of the homunculi stopped. He turned to the man and asked him what he had said. 2 homunculi attacked the man's feet. This man began to say in his mind that he could not even move. While 2 homunculi were holding the man's legs, a 3rd homunculi attacked his face. Someone spoke to the rest of the people and said that they needed to be very careful. While one of the homunculi was ripping the man's mouth open, he said that such a fate was already prepared for insolent people. The homunculi killed that man. Someone in the crowd shouted loudly that a homunculus had killed a human. And the main character mentally began to say that all the homunculi are now in a platoon. Suddenly someone screamed very loudly, either from pain or from fear. One fat and bald man asked the others if they had heard it. And the rest of the people could not even answer, they were all very scared and did not understand what was happening. Everyone began to understand that this sound was allegedly behind an iron gate. But they continued to worry about what would happen next. Someone even begged to be allowed to go home. The main character said in his mind that everything is about to begin. Suddenly, something glowed bright red on the main character's chest. It was written there that you need to pay a lot of attention to the fact that he can die. The main character did not understand what it means to die. Each draft participant had such bright red squares. The main character asked in his mind, who will die, him? This world is quite strange. One man in the crowd says that he once met a person who came back alive from this world. He said that this world recognizes only those who manage to survive all the trials. Suddenly, the squares on the ribcage lit up again in all the participants. But this time they were bright blue. The sword of Azov was drawn there. Rank, lower type, sword effect, no. This square said to take this sword and fight. Live or die. People in the crowd were surprised when they received their swords. They asked if these people wanted everyone to fight. Suddenly, the chief homunculus told these useless people that it was time for them to make their decision. He continued that it was necessary to either fight or simply run away. The head homunculus adds that there is another option, that they will be absorbed. He laughed out loud. All participants of the quest took Azov's sword in their hands and prepared for battle. None of them knew what to prepare for, because no one knew the conditions of this quest. Everyone was very scared. Suddenly, a huge metal gate began to rise, thick white smoke was coming out of it. Something very strange appeared behind those huge gates. It wasn't a homunculus, it was definitely something else. The silhouette of this creature strongly resembled an ant or a praying mantis. So it was definitely a huge mantis. His eyes were like two big beads. One of the participants smiled and wondered where the mantis came from. The man adds that he was so scared that he almost peed his pants. Is that all, just an insect? Suddenly, many more people like him appeared behind the mantis. They flew and flew, there were countless of them. These terrible theologians tore off the heads of all the people who met them on the way. One girl started calling loudly for help. The mantis flew up to her and picked her up with his paw. She was very scared. Another girl shouts that there are too many of them, they simply cannot physically handle them. Suddenly, she felt that her hand was in a lot of pain. Suddenly this girl stopped and said that it must be an ordinary dream. She rejoiced at the thought. This girl ran up to the main character and hugged him. She begged him to save her. Two very large mantises appeared right in front of the main character. The girl continued to hide behind the main character. Suddenly, the protagonist used his magic against the praying mantises. Behind him lay many corpses of other participants. And with the help of the used force, the man hit quite a few mantises so that they flew to a very long distance. The main character mentally started to say that he had been using the hammer for quite some time, but when he used the sword, he realized that his strength was also quite good. The main character adds that it is better for him to wait a little longer so that he does not stand out too much from the crowd. Suddenly, another mantis tore off the hand of one of the participants, a man in glasses and a white coat. This man began to shout loudly that they were just ugly insects. They don't even know who he is. The praying mantis began to shout loudly so that this old man would not pretend to be what he really is not. This man knelt before the mantis, but suddenly someone attacked the mantis. The silhouette was very similar to the main character. But no, this is not the main character, this was some obsessed participant of the quest. He was covered in blood and constantly smiling his terrible smile. He says that this is his 35th, not 45th, murder. This obsessed man simply cut the praying mantis in half. The obsessed man began to speak to the main character. He told him to just get out of there, he was in his way, and if he didn't get out of there immediately, he would just die. The main character at this moment killed one of the praying mantises. When he turned to the haunted man, he was very calm. The protagonist says in his mind that this man is strong enough for an ordinary person. On the other side of the square stood 3 participants. One of them, a man in round glasses and a jacket, says that they must always stay together. If they are separated, then they will surely all die. Suddenly, one of these 3 participants was attacked by a huge mantis. The other 2 were simply shocked by what was happening around them. The participant who was grabbed by the huge mantis began to scream loudly that he did not want to die. A man in glasses and a jacket shouted loudly that everyone must lean against the wall. All the surviving participants began to run very quickly towards the wall. The man in the glasses and jacket started shouting again that they needed to build a defense. Behind this man lay many corpses. They were all just bleeding. The man says that his plan failed, but he thought that everything would work out for sure. The main character began to say in his mind that this should be expected from an ordinary person who works in an office all the time. Behind him appeared the shadow of a very large mantis. The protagonist raised his sword to the mountain and killed that great mantis. He says that such an ill-conceived plan is simply a waste of time in this world. In this plan, there is no sense. On the other side of the square stood another participant with a sword, who was attacked by a very large mantis. This man looked quite funny. He had a black Panama on his head, funny pants with a chain and a bright orange t-shirt and sneakers. But for some reason at one point the mantis simply turned away from that man and stopped. The funny man breathed a sigh of relief. The main character stood silently and watched all this, but what will happen next is still unclear. Suddenly someone asked if he was chosen, if he was definitely not like everyone else. The main character said in a voice that they do not change at all. 2 people were standing on the balcony. Their clothes closely resembled the armor of knights. The main character mentally adds that they are ordinary scoundrels. Suddenly, the same homunculi appeared again. The main homunculus tells all the people left alive that he wants more spectacle. All the people began to run in one heap and loudly ask for help. Others say that they cannot just die like that. One of the homunculi raised a red flag that was 5 times bigger than him and began to say that if all these people want to survive, they must run to that door. Homunculus adds that it must be done as soon as possible. All the people began to run very quickly to the door. All of them were running and did not even notice that they knocked down others and trampled on them. One of the participants shouted loudly that he saw the flag. Someone else shouts that they will only survive if they go through that door. They ran without noticing each other, which was very bad for some. They were already almost at that door. Suddenly, a man in glasses and a jacket stopped. His face showed a look of surprise. The girl in the blue hoodie shouted loudly that no one should go there. She was held by some monstrous hands that penetrated her body with their huge claws. A man in glasses and a jacket shouted loudly that there was something there. There were a lot of scary creatures behind those doors. They looked very disgusting. These terrible creatures tore people to pieces and simply ate them. Terrible creatures began to quickly run after the people who survived. And all the people ran away from them very quickly. They were all very frightened. Some people don't understand why they all run back. Other participants said that there were monsters. They will all die if they don't run back. If they want to die, let them go to those terrible creatures, or they themselves will simply kill them. Suddenly, someone came up from behind one of the participants and put a scalpel to his neck. He says that you have to listen to him if you don't want to die. Grandma is very scared because behind her was a doctor with a scalpel. She asks him what he does. He himself is a doctor. He just told her to keep quiet because she can't even imagine how much money he spent to become the head doctor. The head doctor adds that he should survive. He is definitely different from her, because she is worth nothing at all. Suddenly, the main character approached the chief doctor and grandmother. He offered to introduce himself to them and said his name was Kim Sung-Kol. The protagonist asked what kind of nonsense it was. He looked very angry. Kim Sung-Cheol says that it is now the chief doctor's turn to introduce himself. The main doctor was already very angry. He asked the main character if he was going to fight with him. Kim Sung-Cheol took the head of the homunculus in his hands and threw it at the head doctor. He said it was his reward for being the chief medical officer. The chief physician stood still and held the head of the homunculus. He was very angry because of what Kim Sung-Cheol did. The chief doctor did not understand what he should do with that head. At this time, Kim Sung-Kol received his award. The soul of the company. Rank, normal. Reward, Black Hawk Claw. Fast and cunning like no other. The head doctor threw the homunculus head on the floor and started stomping on it with his feet. Kim Sung-Cheol said that he is already busy and they will definitely see each other later. A very large mantis reappeared behind the head doctor. The head doctor says it's just a dream, it's just a night terror. The head doctor was standing covered in blood. Now he looked very scared. Kim Sung-Kol killed another homunculus and calmly walked away from him. He had to pass through a great mountain of corpses and pools of blood. Kim Sung-Cheol walked over to the sign with the inscription and read it out loud. Let death give freedom. Finally, the main character received the second award. Observer. Rank, normal. Reward, +1 to intuition. You have a sensitive gift of observation. Kim Sung-Kol says that it is very easy to raise your intuition. It's really great, he adds to himself. Now you need to open the characteristics window. Using magic consumes mana to produce destructive power. The characteristics window has opened. Characteristics: Strength, 999 plus, Dexterity, 853, Endurance, 801, Mantra, 3, Intuition, -9, +1, Magic Protection, 611, Intelligence, 501, Charm, 18, Luck, 18. Class: Main, Novice Warrior, Mythical, Subclass, Boss of the Upper Class, Destroyer. Kim Sung-Cheol says that a high level of intuition will help to understand magic more easily. He adds that his intuition score is -9, so he definitely won't be able to get the mage subclass. The main character continues, for this he needs to reach at least 10. There were 2 moons in the sky, one small and the other very large. Kim Sung-Cheol stares intently at the sky. Romantic. The quest is completed. Rank, normal. Reward, +1 palace token. A romantic who can see the light even in difficult times. Kim Sung-Cheol says that he finally received the palace token. If the main character collects a lot, he will attract a lot of unnecessary attention. He says that probably 10 such tokens will be enough. Blue, yellow, white, red. In total, approximately 2,500 different people were hidden. Of all these people, very few survived. No more than 100. Kim Sung-Cheol says that he will get the mage class by any means and he definitely won't care about anything around him. You just have to wait a little. Suddenly, the same homunculus appeared again with a red flag in his hands. He was standing in front of a very large arch from which a very bright light shone. This homunculus gave a loud cry and said that it would all be over soon. Forward. Kim Sung-cheol speaks in his mind, Jacernius Max. Finally the mission is over. Kim Sung-cheol adds that with the help of ordinary quests, he will only be able to raise his intuition by 10. The main character continues that he needs to find secret quests. Suddenly, Kim Sung-cheol stopped. He did not understand who was laughing. Someone behind the protagonist said hello and said it was nice to meet you. The main character mentally says who is so safe. Kim Sung-cheol turned around and saw a bunch of people behind him. They were talking among themselves. One says that he was almost torn to pieces. Another says that he really thought he was going to die. Another says he was attacked by some freak with a scalpel. Another laughed. Kim Sung-cheol says in his head that he did think they were the eyes of the guards. All these people had orange-eyed brains above their heads. The main character was very happy. Finally he found the same hidden quest. A man in glasses and a jacket was scared and said that it was just real hell. Someone began to say that the bleeding still did not stop. Someone else was calling the doctor for help because he had something wrong with his hand. Another participant shouted loudly that he could not see anything at all. The girl sat next to the boy and begged him not to die, to wake up at last. Someone called for help. And the rest begged to let them out of there. A man in glasses and a jacket approached people and asked if they were okay. The girl was sitting covered in blood and smiling. She says that everyone is dead, there is blood everywhere, this dream is just very realistic. Someone behind the man in the glasses and jacket said that he had had enough. And the girl just ran and shouted that everyone died. She laughed loudly. The same obsessed man held 2 swords in his hands and simply killed those terrible creatures. He says that everyone thinks he'll just die, that's all they can show. He needs someone stronger. The main homunculus laughed and said, there are still a lot of them. Humanity is not even half destroyed yet. He is very disappointed. He goes on to say that he's a gracious homunculus, he'll give them a break for a week or so. During this time, they have to get used to the new world. Kim Sung-cheol began to say in his mind that this week was not going to be kind at all. There is no food or water. The only way to survive is to run away. The protagonist adds that if it doesn't work out, he'll have to eat other people. Kim Sung-cheol mentally asks where the crowd he saw earlier is. All the people started to go somewhere. The main character stood looking at them and did not understand where they were all going. The protagonist immediately understood that these selected participants were going somewhere. Because they also had brains with orange eyes above their heads. The eyes of the guard. A device that selects people with special potential. Kim Sung-cheol started running after those people and thought to himself that if he followed them, he would most likely find a hidden quest. The sky above the draft palace was very beautiful. The stars and 2 incredibly bright moons shone brightly in the sky. One of the selected participants began to say what the hell this was all about. He did not understand whether it was possible that someone would jump out of the bushes right now. This participant adds that it could even be an ordinary wolf. Another selected participant agreed with him 100%. Kim Sung-cheol stood by the tree and thought to himself that it was a wolf and that it was 3 times the size of a normal human. The protagonist adds that there are definitely more than 20 people there. Did they all get shelter from the big guild? Suddenly, someone ran up to the selected participants and began to say that it seems that all 25 participants are already in place. He apologized for suddenly taking the lead role. This member introduced himself as Lee Yi-hoon. He asked the rest of the participants if they could all hear the leader's voice. It was clear that it was not Lee Yi-hoon who was speaking, but the leader of the selected members. All participants began to answer that they could hear the leader's voice. Someone says that sometimes something is reported to her. Kim Sung-cheol began to say in his mind that he felt like someone had his eye on these empty-headed members. He adds that this is not a mature decision at all, it must be some kind of mage with a very low rank. Lee Yi-hoon continued to tell all the members that he was very glad that everyone was okay. He adds that now all difficulties are definitely behind. Lee Yi-hoon really hopes that they will all meet again. Kim Sung-cheol stood quietly and watched all this. Suddenly, a bright white light appeared from the bushes and someone laughed very loudly. It was the main homunculus. He says that all people have finally gathered together. All the selected participants noticed the main show homunculus and started shouting loudly that it was the same boss. They are all trapped now. The main homunculus began to calm everyone down so that they wouldn't be so afraid of him. He is the captain of the homunculi. He goes on to say that useless people he just rips to pieces, and select people like these he rewards. Kim Sung-cheol stood and spoke in his mind. Captain? Candidate, captain, low-rank mage, leadership. He began to understand that all this was some kind of organizational structure. The homunculi captain says that all the selected participants must follow him. If even one person gives in, it is 100% guarantee that he will die. The homunculi captain laughed loudly. One of the selected participants began to say that they should all definitely follow the captain of the homunculi, that is what the voices tell them. Everyone began to slowly follow the homunculi captain. One of the selected participants began to ask who this homunculi captain even thought he was. Suddenly, the eyes of some strange creatures appeared in the bushes. They glowed bright red. These creatures watched as all these people walked with the homunculi captain. They were already ready to attack them. Suddenly the homunculi captain stopped and said that they had finally arrived at their destination. They came to the cathedral of the forgotten god of order. One of the selected participants says that it seemed to him that the eye on the wall was moving. Another participant confirmed his words, he also saw the eye moving. The captain of the homunculi yelled at them to finally stop talking nonsense and go inside as quickly as possible. They all followed the captain of the homunculi, not understanding where they were and what would happen next. One of the selected participants asks what it is all about. And another participant says that this strange eye makes her feel uneasy. Kim Sung-cheol began to say in his mind that this hexagon is the cathedral emblem of the forgotten god of order. The conscription palace maintains neutrality in the name of the god of order. Kim Sung-cheol asks in his mind, but how is the wickedness there? The captain of the homunculi began to say that it was enough to huddle around. He invited everyone to quickly sit down opposite the altar. The selected participants asked a lot of questions. God of order? Does this even exist? Why were they all brought there? Someone even says that from this strange eye ants all over the skin. Suddenly, the altar, which consists of 4 parts, began to open. In the crevices of this altar, the same brains with orange eyes were visible, but there they did not glow. Suddenly, these 4 parts moved apart even more and it became much better to see the brains with orange eyes and the eyes lit up. Suddenly, the eyes began to glow not orange, but bright blue. Bright blue stripes appeared on each of the participants. None of them understood what it was. They all asked to be explained to them what was going on there. The captain of the homunculi began to explain that they had nothing to fear, this was a small, ordinary control. Suddenly, Kim Sung-cheol realized that now everything would be clear that he was not selected. The bodies of all the selected participants were the same bright blue color, but Song-cheol's body was different from all the participants. It was bright pink with orange-yellow spots. Suddenly, all the eyes from the altar began to emit red beams, similar to lasers. The curtain is a liar. Activated special skill, distortion. Target, Watcher's Eye. Suddenly, Kim Sung-cheol's body began to change color to that of all the other selected members. All the eyes just went out at one point. Behind Kim Sung-cheol was one of the selected members. He was looking at the main character in such a way that it was clear that he suspected something. Those who serve good and justice are honored by the will of God of order. Effect: strength, endurance, dexterity +10. Restricted zone, draft palace. All the selected participants began to shout loudly that this was all incredible. One shouts loudly that he is full of power. Another shouts that he has never felt the way he feels now. Now that monster doesn't seem so scary anymore. Kim Sung-cheol began to say in his mind that who would have thought that the candidates would immediately receive such benefits. This world is rotting from the very roots. The captain of the homunculi began to say that now they should all throw away all these useless swords and take new, much better ones. They are 10 times more. All the selected participants began to say that these swords looked the same as the old ones, but they were much lighter. Someone started calling monsters. Someone says that now they will catch everyone. The captain of the homunculi began to say that they were all 100% selected. He is the captain and under his leadership they will all pass all the exams and return to the draft palace. All selected participants were very happy with the swords they received. Suddenly, one of the homunculi ran to the palace of the God of Order and began to loudly call the captain. He shouted loudly that they needed to bring more selected members there. The captain of the homunculi says that there are 100% 25 people there. Another man was walking behind the homunculus that ran to the captain. The captain of the Gosunkles got angry and asked the man who he was, an ordinary person. This man tells the homunculi captain not to be so harsh, but he hasn't even introduced himself yet. The man addressed all the selected participants, the captain of the homunculi and the homunculus that came with the man. He apologized for being late. His name is Pak Aram. He explained the reason for his lateness. This man was late because he was stuck in the toilet. The captain of the homunculi was very angry and said that he would definitely not go like that. The God of Order has already distributed blessings and weapons to everyone. A common homunculus says that the leader of the Iron Blood Knights personally selected this person. The captain of the homunculi asked the ordinary homunculus if it was the leader of the Iron Blood Knights. Pak Aram asked the homunculi captain if he had heard of one. This was the end of their acquaintance. The captain of the homunculi laughed and began to say how dare he fool the captain at all. Captain yes too that he gives his approval to increase the number of selected participants. The homunculi captain did not finish speaking and said that in return for this approval, he would tear him to pieces and simply kill him mercilessly. All the participants who came there before were very scared. Kim Sung-cheol says in his head that he thought it was the Iron Blood Knighthood. Suddenly, one of the selected members approached Kim Sung-cheol from behind and asked if he was the same rat that sneaked in there. Kim Sung-cheol silently turned to this member. He asked himself what kind of freak he was. The homunculi captain was very angry. He tells all the selected participants that there is one among them who managed to deceive him. The man who approached Kim Sung-cheol from behind said that it was definitely him. Kim Sung-cheol turned around again and thought to himself, it's the same bastard again. This man continues to say that it is quite scary and asked the main character not to look at him like that. If he is still wrong, then just let Kim Sung-cheol forget about it. But the man continues to say that judging by the clothes in which Kim Sung-cheol is dressed, he has definitely been in battle more than once. The man asked the main character that one battle really requires so much effort. Kim Sung-cheol asks the man what kind of harsh criticism this is. And at this moment, a rather sly smile appears on the main character's face. Suddenly, another man approached them and interrupted their conversation. He says he can speak his mind too. But to begin with, shouldn't they introduce themselves? The man in glasses says his name is Leonis. Kim Sung-cheol says to himself that this man is quite intelligent, he doesn't like it very much. Another member says his name is Dorrance Winterler and he's way better than all the rookies. Another selected member says his name is Ifnadal. Someone's name is Gundam. Someone, Harry Motor. Someone, Tumbletoe. The same man came up behind Kim Sung-cheol again. He asks the main character whether he should run away already. This man adds that Kim Sung-cheol surely cannot die so easily. Kim Sung-cheol asks him if he can get ahead of him in that case. One of the selected participants says that he is doing quite well. This is a real man. Kim Sung-cheol says to himself that they will see which one of them dies first. He needs to see what he can get out of this draft. Using the claws of the secret watchman of the night, claws of the Black Hawk. Kim Sung-cheol says in his mind that now the guard's eyes are definitely his. Suddenly, brains with orange eyes flew over the head of one of the selected participants. They flew right into Kim Sung-cheol's arms. Kim Sung-cheol squeezed those orange-eyed brains in his hand. The main character thinks to himself, should I even hold this in my hand? They're just awful to the touch, but they got to him pretty easily. The guard's eye began to ask what happened. Everything is quite strange, something is definitely not right here. Kim Sung-cheol asked the guard's eye what his name was. The eye of the guard replies that he forgot something, his name is Krill Legal. The eye of the guard asks the main character what happened. He says that he is very dizzy. Kim Sung-cheol did not answer him at all, but simply repeated the name of the guard's eye in his mind. Krill Legal. The main character threw the guard's eye directly into the wall behind him. The captain of the homunculi asked an ordinary homunculi where the magicians in charge were. Kim Sung-cheol thought, Krill Legal, the mage in charge. Suddenly, something very strange began to happen to the man who was behind Kim Sung-cheol. This man began to shout loudly and ask the protagonist what he had just done. The homunculi captain kept asking over and over where the mage in charge was. That man started shouting loudly and saying that that man is a habitual liar. He is not real. The captain of the homunculi shouted loudly, found. A normal homunculus attacked that man. Homunculus beat that man with all his might. There was a lot of blood around. Kim Sung-cheol smiled. He was glad that no one understood who the real liar was. The homunculi captain began to say that it would be bad enough to kill him too soon. He will show him what happens for the fact that he deceived the captain. The Gosunkel captain laughed loudly. That man asked how he was a freak. At this time, he was dragged along the floor by an ordinary homunculus. Kim Sung-cheol simply spread his hands and smiled. Day has come in the palace of the God of Order. All selected participants continued to train tirelessly. One of the selected participants says that if they stay there, they will 100% starve to death. Then why exercise at all? Another selected participant answers him that they all want to die, and he already wants to eat like that. Kim Sung-cheol began to say in his mind that some die without even taking a single step, and the blessed candidates grow stronger every day. Suddenly, Kim Sung-cheol looked sideways. On that side, selected participants trained on mannequins. On the other hand, the selected participants did exactly the same thing. Kim Sung-cheol mentally says that he needs to try to control his power. Kim Sung-cheol adds that he needs to do it as best he can. The main character continued to train on the mannequin. Kim Sung-cheol stopped and said to himself that it was just perfect. The main character mentally adds that if he continues to control himself like this. But suddenly something interrupted his thoughts. Behind him, he flew to smash the dummy straight into Kim Sung-cheol's back. All the selected participants quickly turned and looked at the main character. Kim Sung-cheol very quickly started running somewhere. Someone shouted loudly for them to hold it properly. Some very strange man with a strange hairstyle on his head began to say that he did not accept weaklings. It was White Square conscript John Sik. Conscript of the White Square, Chong Sik, was sitting on a square wooden yakutka. Behind him stood two more burly men. He says that he only takes winners and no one else. This man adds that if they all want to survive, they just need to mercilessly kill everyone at any cost. Kim Sung-cheol was very surprised by these words. Killing each other just to survive. Suddenly, something really surprised Kim Sung-cheol. He saw the same man in front of him. Kim Sung-cheol called out to him loudly. Pak Aram. Kim Sung-cheol says in his mind that he also mentioned the iron-blooded knighthood. Is it still worth watching? One of the selected participants was lying under the wall and said that he was very hungry, maybe it was time to get out of there? Another selected participant asks him if he has lost his mind at all. In this very strange world, someone can attack him at any moment. If he wants to live even one more day, he just needs to sit quietly and chew on those bread crumbs. Suddenly, not many loaves of bread and several small but very beautiful apples fell to the ground. As soon as the selected participants noticed this, they very quickly began to run to the apple bread. They all fought for at least a tiny piece of bread or an apple. Everyone shouted, "Eat, no, I will eat." Someone shouted to let go. The selected participants did not even notice that they were beating even girls. One of the men hit a girl in glasses right in the face with a summer. The poor girl fell to the ground, began to look for her glasses and begged the rest of the selected participants to share at least a small piece with her. And someone was standing behind her and holding her glasses. The one who was standing behind the girl began to wipe his glasses and say that he was called so suddenly that it seems that the head of the knighthood of Iron Blood is his father, whose face he does not know. This man laughed and continued to say that it was a blessing without any responsibility. What is the difficulty? The man claims that thanks to this girl, he has had his fill. The man asked the little defenseless girl if she would mind having a snack with him. They went to eat together, but this man was walking behind the girl and licking his lips. He looked like some kind of maniac. Kim Sung-cheol was standing behind this man and the girl. He looked after them. In the palace of the God of Order, evening gradually came. There was a very beautiful sunset in the sky. The ribs shimmered in different colors, he lilac to pink, he light yellow to bright orange. Kim Sung-cheol suddenly went somewhere. He went into the bushes. The same girl in glasses was lying behind those bushes. She was covered in blood. All internal organs were removed from her stomach. This girl's glasses were broken, and there was something strange in her mouth that looked like a piece of cloth. Kim Sung-cheol stood and looked at her. Kim Sung-cheol started to say that Park Aram's jokes had already gone too far. Finally, the protagonist clearly understood that Park Aram is a very bad person. Kim Sung-cheol says that the name of the person responsible is Lawrence Winterler. The main character has one business with him. Suddenly, someone appeared behind the main character and looked at him with his eyes. The one who was behind Kim Sung-cheol saw the whole world only in red and black colors. Kim Sung-cheol turned very quickly as soon as he felt something wrong behind him. The main character stood and did not understand who was there. In front of Kim Sung-cheol was something very strange. Whether it is a blood clot or some part of the human body is not clear at all. The day has come. All the selected participants were sitting in the forest and everyone was doing their own thing. Who was eating something, who was drawing something on the ground, who was just talking. Park Aram began to say that he wanted to eat so much. He adds that he would like to eat fried pork. It wouldn't even be too bad. Another selected member who was sitting next to Park Aram asked what is just to fill the belly. Many of those participants who survived cannot afford even that. Pak Aram just looked at this man from under his forehead. A man in glasses came up to them and began to say that very many people do not even get such a thing, but today they really want a pork belly. Pak Aram answers the man in glasses that he is not the only one like that. And he almost had time to be disappointed. Suddenly, one of the selected members asked if anyone had even seen Kim Sung-kol. It started to turn gray very quickly in the forest. The evening was coming. Suddenly, Kim Sung-kol stepped into something very strange. The main character says that now it is really getting very hot. Meanwhile, while everyone was looking for Kim Sung-cheol, he was in the forest asking himself the same question. Selection? He stood and just looked at those red and black clots of blood, or some incomprehensible substance. The protagonist adds that he has never seen such a large number of clots in one place in his life. Kim Sung-cheol continues to say that it's probably just the smell of blood. Suddenly, a huge clot appeared behind the main character. It flew straight into Kim Sung-kol's head. At that moment, the main character felt something insignificant approaching behind him and quickly turned around. When he saw this clot, he smiled very slyly. Kim Sung-cheol punched this clot with his fist. This huge clot simply broke into many tiny pieces from the force of the impact. Kim Sung-cheol started to tell them all to attack him together. Suddenly, all those clots that were lying on the ground at one moment started to move very quickly towards Kim Sung-kol. The main character courageously withstood the attack of each piece and was definitely not going to give up. All the pieces fell to the ground, but it was clear that this was really not the end, but only the beginning of the most interesting. Kim Sung-kol was very satisfied with his work. He withstood the attack, but there were still a lot of the same pieces of clots of various sizes around. Suddenly, one of the selected participants was very surprised by something. This participant saw the same blood clots that Kim Sung-kol was fighting with at the time. He called another participant and showed him too. One of the selected participants asked what it was all about. Another participant replies that it seems to be going somewhere. They saw one piece of clot right next to them. The two of them laughed because he couldn't get out of the hole. Another participant says that there is nothing to worry about at all, they are stupid. But after these words, that clot attacked one of the participants. They were just shocked. This clot got on the hand of one of the men and began to burn it. His hands began to smoke. Another man ran up to him and hit him on the arm. The clot bounced off the man's hand. This man began to shout that his arm was in a lot of pain and that he needed to get rid of this clot. This man's hand looked like it was made of stone, but it was just bones, because all his skin was simply burned. At that moment, the clot hit the face of another selected participant who was next to that man. The bespectacled man, who was not sorry, began to shout loudly for everyone to be very careful. The man who had the clot right on his face just died. At this time, the man in glasses continued to tell that these clots catch the smell of blood and rushed to him. Suddenly, Kim Sung-sol came out of the forest. He began to tell one of the participants, who was sitting on the ground and resting, that he should get up as soon as possible, of course, if he did not want to die. That man did not understand what Kim Sung-cheol was telling him. Around the clots became more and more. All the selected participants were in a panic, what to do, where to run. The man who was resting on the ground near the stones did not understand what was happening. All the selected participants started to run away very quickly, they were very scared. Suddenly Park Aram stopped and started saying that they were all trying to escape so ridiculously. While Park Aram was saying that all these contestants were just pathetic candidates, he didn't even notice that Kim Sung-kol was standing behind him. Without thinking, Kim Sung-cheol kicked Park Aram in the back with all his might. Park Aram flew to a very long distance. From the force of the blow, he flew face down on the ground. Suddenly Park Aram got up on his feet and started coughing very hard. Pak Aram began to cough up blood and asked who he was. This person who hit him needs to come out and show himself immediately. Suddenly, Kim Sung-cheol started running towards Pak Aram. The protagonist ran up to him and punched him right in the chin. Pak Aram was already covered in blood. The force of Kim Sung-cheol's blow sent this monstrous man flying into the sky. Kim Sung-cheol hit Pak Aram so hard that he flew up above the forest. Pak Aram began to fall straight into the bushes and screamed loudly, either from pain or from fear. Finally, Pak Aram fell to the ground. This terrible man could not even stand up. He just lay there and moaned in pain. A lot of the same clots began to gather around Pak Aram. Their number kept increasing and increasing. Pak Aram raised his head with the last of his strength and began to say that now he understood who did it, how these clots even dared to allow such a thing to themselves, and that all they had the right to do such a thing. Kim Song-sol hid in the bushes and watched it all. The main character says in his head that he really hopes that Pak Aram will die right here and now. One of the clots was already on Pak Aram's leg. Pak Aram began to crawl away and scream with the last of his strength. Finally, this terrible Pak Aram began to faint and close his terrible eyes. These were his last sighs. Suddenly, something very strange appeared directly above Pak Aram. It was a huge bright blue ring with black lightning around it. Something very strange began to appear from that ring. There were many hieroglyphs and various inscriptions, and a capsule appeared. A little snow began to fall and the frosty air blew. Suddenly all these clots simply froze. A woman dressed in black began to appear from that strange ring. This woman began to say that she could not even believe that she got such a fool. Linked to the white square of mid-ranking mage Dalrance Winterler. Kim Sung-cheol continued to sit in the bushes and mentally asked if this was the same mage associated with the Iron Blood knighthood. He began to remember that her name was supposed to be Dalrance. This woman was standing right next to Pak Aram. Something very strange began to happen around. Small droplets of water were flying around her and everything was shining in a bright blue color. Ice abyss. She used her magic. This woman collected all the clots into one pile above her in the air. Suddenly she destroyed that huge layer of clots. Kim Mon-kol sat quietly in the bushes and spoke the name of this woman. Dalrance Winterler. Kim Sung-cheol adds that judging by the speed of the spell and the damage done, she has medium-rank magic. This woman approached Pak Aram and told him to get up already. Pak Aram began to slowly open his eyes. Pak Aram asks this woman why they just showed up. He's just dying from the pain he's feeling right now. Pak Aram adds that she will tell her father everything and she will be kicked out very quickly. She is just a useless person. Pak Aram goes on to say that she is very lucky that it didn't happen with a lot of pain. This woman threw some liquid in a bottle into his hands and told him to drink it. This woman says that it is enough for him to pretend because she will be in big trouble if Pak Aram dies. Pak Aram asked that woman, will she die? This woman tells Pak Aram that he needs to use hidden quests to increase his stamina. Kim Sung-cheol says in his mind, there they are, the same hidden quests. Pak Aram and this woman went to the mountains near the palace of the God of Order. Pak Aram started shouting that this woman is just another person, let it be training, but how is he supposed to cope? This woman was standing next to the homunculi captain and was telling Pak Aram that she could hear everything. Pak Aram tells her that he speaks so loudly on purpose so that she can hear exactly what he is saying. It is very difficult for him. This woman began to tell Pak Aram that he was almost eaten by those clots, and he would complain about the difficulty. This horrible and ungrateful man replies that his wonderful father, whose face he does not know, sent this woman to save him. This woman replies that she will help Pak Aram deal with everything else, but he has to deal with this on his own, no matter how much effort it costs him. The hero Chil completed the Vestiaire trials on his own. Park Aram asked the woman, Chil. He asked her to tell the story in more detail. The homunculus captain laughed and began to say that he was a hero, so Park Aram would definitely need a lot of strength. Tomorrow he will see everything himself. Kim Sung-cheol kept listening to their conversation and started talking about the Vestiaire trial in his mind. Kim Sung-cheol adds that he caught a rather large fish. Suddenly, a huge piece of stone fell from the mountain. Kim Sung-cheol surprised, arrow? Where did she come from? Kim Sung-cheol adds that this is allegedly not for nothing. This is 100% Vestiaire. The protagonist continued his thoughts. He says that he heard somewhere that she has already reached her limit. He adds that there are rumors that she has special echoing skills. Kim Sung-sol decided he should look into it. Kim Sung-cheol began to ask how the hero got the title Book of Disaster. A very strange mirror appeared in front of the main character, but without reflection. It said, "What do you want?" Kim Sung-kol was surprised, maybe this is some kind of quest. The main character decided for himself that it would be better for him to choose the most difficult of the available options. You dared to choose the hero of Chil, the eternal nightmare of Vestiaire. Get ready to taste death in an endless world. Kim Sung-cheol says if this mission is possibly created for successors. At least it is lucky that there is still some faith in humanity left. Suddenly, a lot of strange creatures appeared around. They all resembled octopuses and other various marine animals. Kim Sung-kol inhaled the air and said that he could definitely smell blood. The main character speaks, faith in humanity. Most likely, someone was sacrificed. While Kim Sung-kol was speaking, the same sea animal-like creatures appeared on his head. Suddenly, a bright red eye appeared on that creature. This entire creature began to blush. Suddenly, Kim Sung-cheol found himself in a very strange place, but how he got there was not clear at all. The main character was sitting on an amazingly charming beach, drinking cocktails and listening to calm music. On the beach there were a lot of different girls in fairly open swimsuits, all of them looked incredibly beautiful. Kim Sung-cheol was very surprised. He asks if this quest is not called Endless Darkness. Kim Sung-kol was lying on a deck chair and sunbathing. He says that he doesn't even want to go anywhere. Suddenly, someone loudly called the main character. All the girls stood around Kim Sung-cheol and asked him if he wanted to play volleyball with them. Kim Sung-cheol got up from the sunbed and started looking for something behind that sunbed. He asks the girls if they want to play with him. Kim Sung-cheol says that sounds pretty great and pulls out his huge hammer. Suddenly all the girls changed a lot. Their eyes began to glow bright red, and black spots appeared on their bodies. Kim Sung-cheol swung a hammer at the girls and started asking what's wrong with all of their faces. The main character adds, are they really upset that he turned out to be an old grandfather? Above Kim Sung-cheol's head, the same octopus with a red eye appeared again, but this time it seemed slightly larger than last time. Suddenly, this huge octopus began to change its color. This huge creature changed its color from red to bright blue. Kim Sung-kol opened his eyes. The main character did not understand where he ended up. He was hanging over the abyss, chained by large chains. Suddenly, the same mantises that the main character had already dealt with appeared again. Some completely different creature began to appear between those mantises. Kim Sung-kol continued to hang motionless. Bright red eyes appeared opposite the main character in complete darkness. Suddenly someone started laughing loudly and saying, "Destroyer." A huge creature with big horns appeared in front of Kim Sung-kol. This creature tells the protagonist that he must not kill him. Kim Sung-kol understood who it was. It was a demon king. The main character was covered in blood and almost without strength. Suddenly, Kim Song-seol broke free from the huge shackles and wrapped those chains around the Demon King. Kim Sung-cheol picked up his hammer. He struck a huge octopus with his hammer. That huge octopus split into many small octopuses. Kim Sung-cheol began to say that he didn't want to admit it, but he had unshakable strength. The main character says that attacks on the mind simply won't work. Suddenly, something really strange started happening. Kim Sung-cheol says that he felt a very strange energy that he had never felt in his life. Kim Sung-cheol says that it destroyed all his native spirits. A fragment of Vestier's memories. The main character says in his mind that this is definitely not Vestier herself. This is just a fragment from her memories. It's unbelievable that one fragment can hold so much magical power. Kim Sung-cheol adds, that's why it's called a test. Only those who manage to overcome 32 pleasures and 27 levels will be able to receive the award. Kim Sung-cheol asks if everything is cleaned up yet, or if he has already dealt with everything. The woman from Vestier's memories began to tell him that he was a very interesting man and laughed out loud. The main character was surprised that some fragment from his memories was laughing at him. It seems to him that this woman has a piece of consciousness left. This woman began to say that Kim Sung-cheol managed to expose her. This somewhat overestimates her expectations of this man. Kim Sung-cheol started asking her who even cares who she is. Kim Sung-cheol adds that he will get his award no matter what. The woman told the main character in a very sly voice that it was time to start. Try. This woman screamed loudly, well. Suddenly, a large circle of bright blue color appeared under Kim Sung-cheol. Right under the main character, something exploded and a bright blue beam shot up to the mountain. Kim Sung-cheol says that this magic restricts any movement. Suddenly, this woman from the memory fragment began to use her magic. Her magic was very similar to fire magic. She gathered all the strength in her hands to attack the main character. Kim Sung-cheol began to say that these cheap tricks wouldn't work for sure. This woman hit Kim Sung-cheol with her fire magic. Suddenly, Kim Sung-cheol jumped out of a big cloud of smoke. This woman from the memory fragment was very angry. How could her powerful magic just not work on such an ordinary young man? At that moment, Kim Sung-cheol hit the ground with all his might with his big hammer. Suddenly, this woman from the fragment of memories flew very quickly into the sky behind Kim Sung-cheol. She began to use her fire magic again against the young boy Kim Sung-cheol. This woman sent a huge layer of fire straight at Kim Sung-cheol. Kim Sung-cheol quickly turned around and told this horrible woman that this was definitely not going to happen, she might as well have strained. This terrible woman began to use the secret technique echo. Kim Sung-cheol finally understood what the secret technique of echo meant. With this secret technique, this woman sent many huge layers of fire at Kim Sung-cheol. The main character says that it doesn't look bad enough, even much better than he could have imagined. Everything around was on fire. There was no such place where a great flame did not burn. Suddenly, Kim Sung-cheol appeared behind this terrible woman with his hammer in his hands. The main character hit this ugly woman and she flew right into the rock. The impact was so strong that the rock split in two. Kim Sung-cheol began to tell this woman from the flashback that she had enough whining, it was too little to kill her. Kim Sung-cheol came closer to this woman and asked, is Hero Cheol? This woman began to answer the main character that he is strong enough, if he follows them, he will meet him himself. According to the prophecy about rock. Kim Sung-cheol replied that he understood and swung his big hammer at the woman again. This horrible woman went on to say that the main character looked a lot like them. Kim Sung-cheol stopped and asked the woman what she meant. This terrible woman replied to the main character that she felt it even because of the horror, but his disappointment in people. On her face there were many black lines under the eyes and from the mouth. The woman continues to say that Kim Sung-cheol's disappointment in people is much stronger than in them. Suddenly, this terrible woman's eyes glowed red and she asked Kim Sung-cheol what he would do if his hope was blown away like ashes in the wind. Kim Sung-cheol got very angry and told this horrible woman to just shut her mouth. He hit her with his huge hammer.
If you have watched up to this point, then I am very grateful to you, because this is where the video ends. If it's not difficult for you, then like this video and subscribe to my channel. And if you want to continue this story, then write in the comments. Thank you all, I love you all.